Welcome to Two Humans in Tech. This is a place where me and my friend Gila Naor, we're both former engineering managers. We're just going to talk about what it's like to be a human in tech today. And the whole point is that we're going to show up as human. We're going to pick a topic and we are going to discuss it and see what kind of ideas and insights we can create together. In this first episode, we decided to talk about how there's this strange phenomenon that even though tech is filled with people and we're all working together, it is a very, very lonely place right now. Enjoy. Good morning, Gilad.
Morning, Michael.
I'm very excited for this. I know that you and I have had a lot of meaningful, kind of intense conversations about our careers and about the industry. And sometimes I leave those conversations feeling like I feel like there was stuff that we said that would resonate with a lot of people, but these ideas only seem to come out in conversation, not when I'm sitting behind my text editor and trying to come up with something. It's just the flow of our thoughts creates something that's bigger than anything I'd be able to create on my own. So I'm really excited for us to actually record a conversation and see what we can express together.
Yeah, thank you. It was a great idea on your end to do this. We've had a lot of really great conversations. So really looking forward to capturing some of that, sharing it, and getting feedback from more people.
Exactly. Yeah, getting input from people. So today we're going to talk about, we decided this idea that tech has people everywhere, but why does it feel so lonely? I'd love to ask you, this was sparked from a conversation that you and I were having. You know, what makes you feel strongly about this whole idea?
Yeah, thank you. So on a personal note, I work mostly with engineering managers. And through that lens, managers suffer more from loneliness than most other people in tech, which seems counterintuitive because it is one of the jobs in tech that is most people oriented. You spend the most time actually talking to people and not just staring at a blinking cursor on a screen. And yet, loneliness is a much bigger problem for managers than other people in tech. So that's number one for me personally. And number two is tech and loneliness is an issue that doesn't affect just managers, and it also goes beyond tech. I think it's a societal issue driven partly by tech, not only by just tech, but that's certainly a trend we're seeing, that there's a loneliness epidemic hitting society at large. So this is a very broad-reaching topic, and many people are quietly suffering through it, thinking they're the only ones who are lonely. But everyone is suffering to some extent here.
Yeah, and it's interesting how when you're lonely, knowing that other people are lonely too can somehow alleviate the loneliness. And we don't talk about it enough. But what something you said is actually interesting. So on the one hand, you're saying it's something that is engineering manager specific. There's like a specific flavor of it, maybe, but it's fitting within this broader societal epidemic of loneliness. So what is it about engineering management specifically that you see?
So there are 5 inherent challenges when you're a manager that make loneliness a bigger challenge. And part of that is the work that you do happens behind closed doors. You don't have the fast dopamine cycle of an engineer getting something done. And so you're operating from a hormonal imbalance to get started, which puts you in a more susceptible position where the regular challenges of loneliness are exacerbated. Beyond that,
Exacerbated, right? That's the word.
yeah, English is hard.
It
And
is.
so the lack of dopamine cycles, the cycles are longer. When you do have a win, it's like a coach who works with someone for months in private conversations. Now you have someone who is struggling. Now they're doing great, but all the work happened behind closed doors, and you can't really tell anyone. You can't share your wins with everyone. No one can actually see your wins. So that's one example of a challenge that is unique to managers and coaches as well. Then it's 2026. We're seeing a lot of layoffs, a lot of reorgs, changing how the company operates. When you're a manager, you're typically attacked from both ends. You have no influence over these decisions, who will be laid off, whether to even have layoffs, but you're the messenger of the bad news. And there's also this period between the decision and delivering this message where you have to keep a secret. And keeping secrets is something that managers have to do, because if we want people to open up to us in our one-on-one conversations, if we truly care about them and want them to develop them, then people will share secrets with us. And the organization, senior leadership, will share secrets with us, because that's why they have this function of management to help facilitate these organizational challenges. And so managers walk around their work life carrying weights that they can't share with anyone. So that's another example of what makes management lonely.
Right. So do you want to keep trying to remember the next three? Because I think you said there's 5 reasons.
Yeah. So I wrote a post recently about the 5 rings of loneliness.
Ah, okay.
So I can pull up my notes. I don't have it all memorized. There's the confidentiality, there's the dopamine part, and there are 3 others, and I can pull them up.
That's all good, because I'm actually very curious about something you said with the loneliness of victories. That's an interesting framing, because I think when I've thought about how we don't get those dopamine hits as managers, it's always been more about a motivation and the ability to keep going, and the self-doubt it creates when you don't have tangible wins. But it's interesting you're talking about how not only that, but like you're not, and like we've discussed a lot. I've discussed a lot with people about how you need to share your victories so that you get recognized. You've introduced a whole new dimension of like, no, you need to share your victories so that you actually feel good about them, because just sharing victories is intrinsically something that feels good. It's not only about the transactional utilitarian benefit that comes from sharing your victories, which is what we often talk about. Like, make sure you have a brag talk. We tell engineers, and as an engineering manager, make sure you're measuring your deltas, the difference you're making. But it's like, yeah, it creates loneliness. I never thought about that. I did kind of skim through your article actually this week, but I can't say I read the whole thing. And
Yeah,
then keeping secrets, yeah, like there's so much that gets divulged to us from people that we're leading, and then from the organization itself, that you can't tell other people, or you have to kind of filter in a certain way. And then you go home, and it's like you have your spouse, maybe your partner, whoever it is, and they don't get it. And yeah, as a coach, I mean, I definitely feel that exacerbated. There's that word again, to a large degree, because like, what am I doing all day? Like, I'm in tech still, but I'm not really. So I'm like talking to engineers and engineering managers and leaders all day, but I'm doing something that is completely different than I've ever done, and like no one in my like physical world understands. I don't know any coaches in my world, and it can be very lonely. So it's a similar thing.
Yeah, I think one of the big buzzwords, and it became a buzzword for a real reason, is community. We have all these people trying to build communities, and Facebook is connecting people, giving people the power to build communities. But fundamentally, as human beings, as animals, we are community oriented. We are based on a pack. We are engineered to need other people to have our tribe. And when we talk about the loneliness epidemic at society at large, a lot of that is the breakdown of the local community, the taking of this power of the local community and distributing more broadly means that most people don't have their local tribe. And when you talk about managers, one of the other rings of loneliness is losing your pack, is switching from an individual contributor where you're an engineer, you're working with other engineers for most of your day, and you can talk with them and share with them and consult with them and share your frustrations and your wins with them. And you take all of this community that you spent years building and you're just tossing it all away to switch to a new role, to a management role, where you're not working with other managers most of the day. You're still working with your team, but now there's this power imbalance. There's changes in expectations. And so you toss away the community that you spent years building, and you're now in a situation where it's much harder to build a new community from a structural perspective. And we need this community. That's how we're built as humans.
Yeah, well, I noticed when I moved into management, it took me a few years to actually become aware of this. It was almost like being the frog in the proverbial boiling water, that I realized that I'm teamless. As an engineer, you have a team of people that the manager is always telling you and encouraging you, at least if you have a good manager and a healthy culture, work together, cater to your strengths, and help each other with the parts that you're not so good at, and the power together with our powers combined. You're going to be the Megazord or whatever the case is. And then as a manager, it looks like you're on a team. I have 3 other managers, and we're all reporting to a VP. In my situation, that was a very similar, typical pattern at a scale up. Except we don't work together, and we actually, on some level, compete with each other. We're not working on the same projects. We're not working necessarily even on the same cadence. And we have different flavors of how we want to lead our teams. And sometimes if we ask each other for support, there can be heavy egos that come in strong opinions. And the VP, it's accepted, though. The VP is just going to be they're too busy to help us become a team. They're too busy to bring us together. And even if they brought us together, what are they bringing us together to do? Like, we're working on different aspects of the software, usually in different product areas, different domains. It's a very rare situation where there is this overarching goal that a department or even a unit is working towards. I don't think most companies are mature enough to be working like that. And it's funny because I was talking to, so yeah, I guess a lot of this discussion with me and you started a few weeks ago when you'll tell us about this thing about your serendipitous encounters that you were having while you were traveling at an in-person conference. And then you made me realize, that the most popular event that I was able to bring to the engineering community that I created, called Task Together, which is for ADHD engineers, was whenever I put out a poll, it'd be like, hey, do you want a productivity workshop, or do you want some sort of troubleshooting workshop, or do we want to just talk about problem solving, or do we want to just get together and just talk and just be with each other and kind of like just talk about what's going on in your life in a structured, facilitated, not awkward way? That was the one that always won. And I realized that is actually what engineers seem to be most interested in. And then I launched that program again, or that space, about a week ago. It's going to be happening next week. And I'm talking to a manager this week on a coffee chat through Rands. And within the first 10 minutes, he starts telling me how, hey, like the hardest part about being the manager over the past few years is I've realized that like we're all so lonely. And in my company, I've started creating these dedicated spaces where we all just get together and just do peer support. We just spend time together. I'm like, that's unbelievable. It's the exact same thing that I'm trying to promote right now, because it's just such a need. So it's not only managers. We're all feeling lonely at some level. I'd actually love to understand, that loneliness of victories and the keeping secrets that you talked about. Those are still very broad. How do you think that those show up in a unique way in tech? Because you could say the same thing probably about any managers at any company in any industry. where there's like a similar type of org structure. What is it about tech that maybe exacerbates this even more?
It's a great question, and I don't have a perfect answer. And so in general, when I think about questions, there are some tools I reach to in how I'm thinking. So I'm just thinking out loud here, trying to,
That's the point here.
yeah. And one of the tools that is helpful is to take situations to the extreme or flip them around. And if I look at misery in tech, very few things compared to Microsoft in the 90s with per team stack ranking. So you get performance reviews, and every single team has to rank everyone in the team from 1 to N, best to worst. And that means that you are competing with the other engineers on your team. So what you said earlier about an engineer having a team, that gets lost with this structure because you're competing with the other people. You don't have that safety net. Luckily, as tech has moved away from this, and we don't do that at a per team level anymore. 2026 for managers, the situation is actually different because of flattening, because of layoffs. You're actually competing with your manager peers because there just aren't many promotion opportunities. And so what you mentioned earlier about being teamless as a manager and the other peers, you're competing with them, that becomes a bigger and bigger issue in 2026. So just wanted to put that out there, that managers have a really rough time in 2026, and it's not easy, and you should definitely be really proactive on finding and building your own support net. Now, circling back to your broader question about tech in general, I think there are two, well, they're related. I mentioned communities as something that we need intrinsically as humans. But a community is only useful when there's a level of trust. Trust is the critical ingredient in this recipe for building communities that then can elevate this sense of loneliness that we all have a risk of suffering. And there's something about tech that makes it harder to build this trust. Not always. The best way, so there's a lot of talk about psychological safety and doing these offsite events to build trust. Real deep trust, I've only found there's just one way to actually build real deep trust, and that is doing really hard things together and succeeding in overcoming these challenges. You have to do hard things together and succeed and overcome that. And that is what creates really deep trust. But when that happens, that's magic. But when that doesn't happen, there's just a superficial level of trust. And with the superficial level of trust, you can't really be your authentic self. You can't open up. You can't share all of your failures and your struggles, and you're carrying a weight alone. I know for myself, when I first started to be a leader, I had this perception of what a leader should be, and I was role-playing that. I was an actor. I was acting that, and I did a terrible job. It's only when I found the space where I had to strip away the layers and really just go in and be myself, which is actually much easier and it's much freer. That's when I became a much better leader. So I don't think I really answered your question on why this is unique to tech, but I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, well, I'm realizing that I don't really have a great answer for why tech specifically, and maybe it's not tech specifically. Honestly, maybe we're in tech, and so we're viewing everything within the lens of being in tech. But like you said, it might be actually just this virtual world that we're all finding ourselves in is lonely. And a lot of people are trying to replace that community that you were talking about with their professional peers. When we don't have, I guess, traditional communities like we used to have, when we barely know our neighbors, when our relationships are much more transactional now, like, oh, okay, we're going to do a carpool together. All right, or like, yeah, you can watch my kids once in a while when I'm not here because you're a neighbor with a teenage child who can do that. Like, we don't have that intrinsic sense of belonging like maybe we did, I don't know, 60 years ago. And so people are looking at like, well, I'm an engineer, so I'm gonna be an engineer. Like that's who I am. That's my identity. But then now we're remote, and it's all about results. And there's no space for human connection. But you're looking to your peers in engineering as the people you want to connect with, because I guess you feel like you maybe have the most in common with them. I mean, we're in the same career, and that's who I am, right? In my career. But every meeting is like it's very transactional, or it's a forced social experience, which still just has that, well, HR is going to have a team building activity, or your manager even might have a team building activity. But it's like you still have this undercurrent of like, yeah, well, we work together, and this is just so that we can work better together. Oh, well, I'm going to go to a networking event, a social, but still, like people are there usually to like find their next opportunity, or to find the next person in the chain of events that will bring them their next opportunity or their next promotion, or looking for a mentor. It's like it's very just subtly maybe sometimes, but self-serving or utilitarian, and not because people are being selfish, but because when your identity is about your career and you're looking for other people along that same line of connection, then it's about your career, and your career is about money, and your career is about your growth. It's about yourself. And so, yeah, why tech specifically? Maybe tech. I think we have this idea of tech being something that is glamorous, and there has been so much emphasis coming out of certain big companies over the last decade on like making sure everyone's included, and making sure that there is psychological safety, all these big buzzwords. And so I think when you go into tech, you have this expectation that it's going to be amazing. And so maybe that's what's happening, is that there's a bigger level of disappointment because of the expectation. Whereas, like, I don't think a salesperson is going into their sales organization thinking they're going to make friends and have deep relationships and be able to be their authentic self, so to speak, when they're doing cold calling and selling a SaaS product. I think they still need that, but I don't think they expect that from their team. I don't think they expect that from their company. But when you go into a tech organization, because of all the veneer of like inclusivity that is out there right now, you expect that. It's just, and when it's not delivered, it's I don't think we know how to process that. I don't think we're even aware that it's happening. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so one of my favorite quotes, and I couldn't hone it into a single author, is that all of suffering exists in the gap between expectations and reality. When we expect reality to behave a certain way and it doesn't, we suffer. And we can change reality or we can change our expectations. It's a two-sided lever. And I just want to layer on another approach here, which is how does tech contribute to the challenges of loneliness in tech and beyond tech? And a lot of that is, you need that community, you need to be your authentic self, you need to form connection, you need what you mentioned, psychological safety. And tech makes it intrinsically harder for us to have psychological safety because everything is recorded, everything is like on this immutable blockchain. Our entire lives are now there. That sales rep going onto their first sales call, that call is now going to be recorded. It wasn't 15 years ago. Every word they say will be analyzed by their mentors and coaches who want to help them grow, and they will grow better through that. But the opportunity to make mistakes is always exposed these days. And as a parent of teenagers, I think to myself growing up, if you want to ask the girl out to the dance, it's nerve-wracking, and you can't stop thinking about that. And then you gather the courage to go ahead and ask her out to the dance. But today, you'll do that with everyone around you carrying their cell phone, and maybe someone will record all of that, and that will then be on the internet for the rest of your life. And it's the same thing at work these days. Right now, you're using AI to code. Well, now your prompts are captured as well. The conversation you're having with the AI to create the code, that also goes into source control these days. Just everything is recorded. There's no way to just have an off-the-record conversation anymore. And that closes us up into a shell, because opening up now is more dangerous than it was 20 years ago. The half-life of a mistake is now eternity.
Right. So there's more pressure because of tech to perform. Like even in this conversation that we're having right now, it's recording. So we do have a little bit of a different tone, a little bit of a different energy than if it wasn't being recorded. And I mean, maybe you're touching on something. When you work in tech, you're using the most advanced tech. And so you're actually the most targeted by all of this tracking, all of this monitoring, all of these things that are supposed to make you work better and help you understand yourself better, but ultimately just put you always in the evaluation seat, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah, we're like Truman in the Truman Show, except we know we're being watched.
Yeah, no, there's a ton of pressure. And I think that also leads into another part of loneliness that I've found when I speak to people is there's a pressure to have it all together. And again, it's going to be something that is going to be cross industry. And I think because in tech, there's this glamorous veneer associated with it, and people are constantly putting forth these images of how amazing their job is and how beautiful this company is. When you don't feel that good in what you're doing, or you don't feel that confident in what you're doing, then it's so easy to think you're broken. And so you don't even want to open up to anyone about that because, well, they obviously got it together. And so everyone's just walking around, sitting in they're not walking around. I mean, I wish they were walking around. They're sitting at their MacBook Pro, trying to look put together, checking their preferred LLM 20 times to make sure that their messages are confident and capable before they even send them out. Forget about their code, their Slack messages, their Teams messages, because no one can know how messed up I feel right now. No one can know that I actually have no idea what I'm doing. No one can know that I actually feel a tremendous amount of pressure to learn the next technology, and that I'm terrified that I'm on the chopping block here because I don't think I'm actually performing as well as everyone else. It's hard to share those ideas and those insecurities with people. And yeah, like you said, like we're not developing that trust by working. I mean, okay, so I'm going to tangent a little bit. So you said that we develop trust by working on hard things together. I think that may be one way to develop trust. I don't know if that's the only way to develop trust.
So yeah, I perfectly agree. I think there are layers to trust. So to clarify, that is the best way I've seen to develop real deep trust. The kind of trust that you can call someone up after not talking with them for 20 years and ask for help. That's not the level you have to get value. You get value from each additional layer of trust that you build. Every layer of trust that you build unlocks more camaraderie, more people to open up with. to fight that loneliness a bit more?
So I might rephrase it as not necessarily working on hard things together, but let's say going through hard things together.
Yes.
So, like, I might not have ever worked on a project with a friend of mine, right? But through us opening up with each other about the different things that are going on in our lives that are challenging and empathizing with each other, we've built an extreme amount of trust together. But I can't say I've ever built anything with the people that I'm thinking about in my life, right? But it's that vulnerability that gets exposed, that, and then seeing, hey, they didn't judge me, or hey, they get me. Like, that's, it's funny because it needs trust, but it also builds the trust. And maybe when you're working on hard things together, a similar type of effect occurs. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I think it is impossible to succeed in working through hard challenges without having a baseline layer of trust. That is a prerequisite. And then you can build on top of that to build a deeper connection, deeper layers, deeper levels of trust.
Like, I mean, there's different dimensions and different types of trust, right? We don't even know, we didn't really define what trust is, and I'm not sure we're going to. But like, there's like, hey, trust that, like, I trust that you're going to get what you said done.
Yeah, so Charles Feltman has a really small book called The Small Book of Trust, I think, and he breaks trust down into 4 dimensions, into sincerity, reliability, competence, and care. Personally, I find taking this big, ambiguous term, taking a big and ambiguous term and trying to break it down helps us make it more applicable, something we can actually make progress towards. And so you can talk about, how do I increase how sincere I am in my relationship with Rebecca? How do I make myself more reliable? How do I improve my competence so that I can actually do what I say that I do? And I think Carrie's one of the more interesting ones. If I'm want to earn someone's trust, how do I make myself actually care more about them? And so as you fill up those 4 buckets in a relationship with someone else, you will slowly you will increase the likelihood of earning more of their trust. And when you start to ask for those 4 things from someone else, you'll start to build your trust from them.
Yeah, no, it's an interesting paradigm. Well, there's also, like, will you, what were the 4 again? Remind me.
So it's sincerity,
Yeah.
reliability,
Yeah.
competence, and care.
Sincerity, reliability, competence, and care. Right. So reliability and competence, I think those 2 maybe are the dimensions, that the buckets that get filled up when you're working on something hard together, let's say on a team.
Yes.
Right. Like, I care. Well, the person might care about themselves, and that's why they're doing what they need to do, and that's why they might be doing stuff for you, because they know that that's how they're going to succeed. And this isn't a moral judgment. I'm just saying, like, it could be completely, again, I use this term a lot, it seems, utilitarian. Like, I have a goal and I need you to get me there. I need you to help me get me there. So I'm going to now, quote unquote, care about you. But it's not really because I actually care about you. I care about you insofar as you can help me accomplish my goals. Whereas maybe what I was talking about, like being vulnerable, I think there's sincerity and care. When I'm like talking about my friend, we haven't worked on anything together. So does he necessarily care about my competence? I don't know. But then when we start giving to each other, let's say, like, I have a specific friend in mind. Like, let's say he had a kid recently. So he needs meals from the community. So, like, now that's where maybe the reliability will come in. Like, am I going to be there for him physically, emotionally, logistically when needed? Because if I care and I show care, when I show up and I really mean what I say to the person and I'm honest with the person, there's care and sincerity, but like I don't do it when they actually need me to. At the point when they need me to in time, then I'm not reliable. And if I try, but then the meal is like, you know, they're allergic to it, and I should have known because they told me 10 times, like, well, there's my competence not showing up. So we've obviously strayed far from tech has people everywhere. So why does it feel lonely? But it's interesting to understand, what does even loneliness mean? Understand, why is tech lonely?
Yeah, and just like we're talking about a lot of really deep topics here, another really important point is that we are what we do. I don't know who first phrased it, but that's just neurobiology. That's how our brains work. The things we do again and again imprint themselves on our brain and change who we are. And so if we care about someone else repeatedly, we will actually care about them. If we perform the actions of care, we will end up caring about someone else.
Yeah. Well, I'd actually love to hear about your serendipitous occasion. If you could tell me about that again, because that's what sparked this whole discussion.
So I was at a conference in San Francisco, and the context here, because context is everything. I worked at Meta, back then Facebook, when COVID hit, and we all moved to work from home. And then we fulfilled our lifelong bucket list item of traveling across the US right as we were going back to office. So I left Meta, we bought a van, and we spent several years on the road traveling across the US. And since then, I've been working from home as a solopreneur, which starts with solo, all alone. And this was the first the first time I was physically with so many tech people in close to 6 years. So the context there is I was meeting a lot of people, but that was in contrast to the previous 6 years. And I just saw how much I was energized by talking with people in the hallways. I annoyed every single person in every single line I was at. I always started talking to people, and I'm an introvert. Don't get energized by talking to people all day, every day, but it was extremely energizing. So that was the context behind that conference, and I just loved that. And that made me realize how much I miss and how much I really enjoy the conversations we have with each other, the conversations I have with other people in the field. And that's just something I'm looking to do more of, meet a lot more really interesting people. And my hypothesis is there are more people like me. That's number one. And number two, there will be a lot more people like me because of AI, because of layoffs, whether driven by AI or that's just the excuse. It doesn't matter. AI enables the people who are laid off to start new companies. And so my guess is there will be a lot more people in the same challenge of trying to go out on their own, who still want that human connection, who still want to talk to more people, who want to consult with more people. Every day you work, you build something, you have a new type of challenge, but you don't have the teammate to consult with. So you really want not a fractional CTO or a fractional CMO, but a fractional one to start building those relationships that can or cannot actually grow into real trust and connection. Yeah, that's the gist of it.
There was almost the point of this call was, let's just talk and see what emerges in conversation. There was someone on the Rand's Slack channel that I saw they had an interesting intro. So I reached out to them because I was like curious about what they're up to. It was very intriguing. And then they're like, "Oh, I'd love to have a conversation with you, unless you have any specific questions. You can just, if you want to just ask them here." And then I actually said to her, I'm like, the truth is, I don't have any specific questions, but I know that questions will emerge if we actually get together. And she's like, yeah, I was hoping you'd say something like that because I really wanted to get on the call also. It was just like one of those things, like, boom, like we only spoke for like 5 seconds, like 3 lines exchanged, but there was enough like energy in the room that is like, yeah, like, we want to just connect. We don't know why. There's just like a mutual energy, a mutual connection that we could sense, a certain resonance. And that's, I'm finding in myself that being lonely means I'm also bereft of creativity. Getting in a room together, even a conversation like this, is where ideas can fuse together and create and generate. And I think in tech, you need to have that type of back and forth. And with, yeah, Slack, it's just not the same. Well, I think we could wrap up the discussion here.
Yeah.
And if anyone made it this far, we appreciate it. And I've enjoyed this. It's nice to just be ourselves.